Tiramisu. Peace, Black Power, and welcome to Harlem Liberation School's YouTube channel. Harlem Liberation School is a Black nationalist, Pan-African community organization based in Harlem. We provide relevant and credible political education to help Black people wake up, clean up, and stand up, in the words of Brother Malcolm X. To do this, we provide panel discussions, political commentary, mini documentaries, leadership tips, classes, and interviews with some of our most dedicated and effective leaders, activists, and intellectuals around the world. Peace and Black Power families, brother IJ Taimba from Harlem Liberation School, having little technical glitches where we teach Black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up. We hope that if you're here, you're going to invite more people. We promoted this pretty well. If you're watching it and you can share with 2 people or share in some groups on your social media, we appreciate it, because we have a very, very important person with a very important message. I want to quickly announce a few things. Number one, tomorrow, or I should say Monday, on so-called President's Day at 2 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have a Harlem legendary wordsmith. He was a former Harlem hip-hop MC. That's how we met many years ago, doing hip-hop in Harlem. And he evolved into be one of our great spoken word poets, Brother Earl Majette, known affectionately as Brother Earl. He's going to be interviewing with us, and he's going to be talking about the power and importance of poetry as a form of art in terms of amplifying the messages in the Black liberation movement. And that's going to be very interesting, because he's not only kind of a historian on it, he's a practitioner. So we look forward to that, 2 p.m. Eastern, Monday, here at Harlem Liberation School on YouTube. That'll be a live broadcast. Also, I wanted to say that on February 26th, my second monthly leadership workshop. Last month was very successful. We talked about how to prioritize tasks in our organization. This month, February 26th, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern, we're talking about how to generate or solicit relevant community input, getting community feedback, so we're not going off on something and the community gives no buy-in because we never asked them what they were interested in or what they wanted or what their issues were. We're going to talk about the importance of it. We're going to talk about different ways to get that input, that feedback from the community. And that'll be, the link is in the description section of this video. So you can find the link there to register and get more information. That said, family, tonight we're diving into a powerful and timely conversation about how racism operates in the modern world. And our guest is Brother Scotty T. Reid. I've known of this brother for some time. He's a founder of Black Talk Media. Under that, he does a number of things under that umbrella of Black Talk Media. He's a longtime independent broadcaster, and he's also the author of a new book entitled Proxy Racism, which is essentially what he'll be talking about with us this evening. And in this groundbreaking work, Brother Scotty challenges the idea that racism is just about issues of individual prejudices and emotional sort of reactions to people, and really talking about how it functions through systems, right? Through institutions and middlemen, and how it actually gets us to cooperate, to be parties to our own victimization, right? It gets us to actually help promote some of the tropes and the practices of racism. And it's going to talk about how it affects and impacts our communities and what we can do to recognize and resist it. So with that said, I want to bring our brother on.
Good evening to you, Brother Najee. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you and see you. How you doing, Brother Scotty?
I'm trying to make it in this world just like everybody else, and I'm walking on top of it like my uncle used to say, so I must be doing okay.
That's what's up, brother. Well, listen, I've been checking you out for some time. Your writing, I love your writing and your analysis. I think I see you on Substack. I want to say is where I see some of the writing.
I
Um,
launched some stuff on Substack this year.
yeah, I really like the power the power of the writing is sharp, it's analytical. I believe, in my opinion, is the type of things we need. I think that we live in a media circus with several clowns running around who are incompetent, foolhardy, and seeking attention. And in the midst of that, we're being deprived of really crucial information and tools and strategies we need to be free, so to speak. So I really just want to say, from brother to brother, I personally appreciate you and what you're bringing. It's very
Thank you.
important. Yes, sir.
Like you,
Now,
like you, I'm sorry, like you
yeah,
mentioned earlier, we both um, been aware of each other in what they call Facebook friends probably for a while. I've been on Facebook since 2008 and immediately try to take advantage of the communications aspect of that network with the diaspora and with Black people here in the United States. But I've been checking you out in the Harlem Liberation School, and I know that you're a great educator, coming from an Afrocentric view, and that's much needed and appreciated.
hey, brother, mutual respect. That's a beautiful way to start. Thank you, man. So listen, you argue in your book, and the name of his book is Proxy Racism, by the way. You argue in your book, Proxy Racism, um, that racism today often operates through proxies rather than openly racist individuals. Can you explain what proxy racism is and how it may differ from our traditional understanding of racism?
Let me preface everything by focusing in on the word proxy. Proxy has a specific meaning, and anyone can be a proxy of the dominant system. And what is the dominant system that we're talking about? Where for those that I have been associated in the Black independent media space, and particularly on the platform I founded, Black Talk Radio Network, I was introduced to the writings and the later even Mr. Fuller hosting his own radio program. I think it was on YouTube. I forget the network it was on, but we had a show called The Context of White Supremacy, and they would, have him on as guest and then discuss the compensatory code book. And so that was my first really introduction to the system of white supremacy as a system, as a global system. And so anyone can become a proxy of that system. And I think that's where I kind of expand on that ideal of Mr. Fuller's, because you know Mr. Fuller always talked about asking questions. Well, how did this small minority of people become such a dominant force on the planet? It just wasn't logical to me. But I don't know, for whatever reason. I guess this older Black teenager taught me how to read before I started school, and I just always would read, and nothing interests me more than history, because you're reading about drama, you're reading about life stories, you're reading these narratives, and some of them are very, very interesting. And then as you become an adult, then you start to learn why some narratives exist and what have you. So a proxy can just simply be any agent of the system, and that system is the system of white supremacy, no matter the face.
Yes, sir. All right. And so typically when we talk about racism, we're talking about um, it may be they're racist because they fear that we're going to genetically dominate them, or they're racist because they want to exploit our labor, or they're racist. And I notice you don't spend a lot of time on the intent. You it's almost like you're saying that's not important. You're more interested in the impact and how we address it systemically. Am I right in that assessment?
Yes, institutionally, you know, I'm not taking a crap on civil rights because it was right to pass a law to end Jim Crow. Some people cite board the what is it Brown versus the Board of Education as the end of desegregation. That was just the public school system in terms of jobs, employment, pay, housing, all of that. That did not come along until the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So I'm not crapping on that. Okay, that was justice, and of course it could have went forward, but again, look at who we dealing with. So you got to fight for everything, every inch, every mile. And so I'm not crapping on that, but how the system adapted to the 1964 Civil Rights Act was to then begin first COINTELPRO and infiltrating our grassroots organizations and spying on them and all of that so people can look up COINTELPRO. But then the so-called legitimate avenues to like it depends a lot on credentials. That gets into respectability politics, where they went to school. We give a lot of pride to Black universities and what have you, historically Black colleges, and that's where these thinkers would come through, and the system would identify people within that class and then promote them in the system. That's how you then end up, let's say, with your first Black Secretary of Education. Not that I don't remember there ever being one, but there have been some Black cabinet level officials. I think they might have started with Jimmy Carter or what have you. So, but that then gives the illusion of inclusion, then also makes you think that you've acquired some measure of power when really you haven't. The system has just adapted.
Okay, brother, let me ask you this. You said a mouthful, and I just want to make sure that people are intrigued by what you're saying, that they get what you're saying, they go out and get your books, they internalize that, and they operate on the basis of what you're kicking in the book, because it's very real and it's very timely. Could you, for people who still don't know, well, what's he talking about, this proxy racism? Could you give us one or two practical examples of proxy racism that most of our people watching might experience,
Okay.
but they may not recognize it as such?
Okay. In the book, I do have some case studies, real world case studies, and also personal experience. And so I'm gonna make this as quick as possible. So we have a local branch of the NAACP. I'm not disparaging all members of the NAACP or anything. I'm just telling facts as what had happened in my county here in North Carolina. So we have this long running, I think since the 90s or maybe the 80s, I became aware of them in my county. But they've always had only about two different presidents and what have you. But then whenever there was a crisis in the community, like, for example, police shooting of a Black person, rest in peace, Jason Lipscomb. If you never heard of his case, go look it up, where he was shot. Like they fired in a residential neighborhood over 30 something shells from their handguns. Okay. And so we, the activists, came to wonder or ask the question of, where's the NAACP? Why aren't they here? Why aren't they visiting the family? Why aren't they putting out statements through the media? Had they done any investigation? Had they asked anybody any questions? It's like it didn't exist except for its annual fundraiser, which is a what they might call a black tie event, a ball or something where people get dressed up and go have some catered food and what have you to raise money, but they weren't active in the community. So we decided to join the NAACP. I read up on their rules and regulations and how does one become the president of the local chapter. And so we looked up this information. A group of about 8 activists who had came together actually and met through the George Floyd protest of 2020 and trying to remove a Confederate statue. So then once we read the bylaws and the regulations, okay, let's recruit some people like us. We got connections and family members. Let's recruit. Let's go join the NAACP, and then let's put a person, vote for a new president, vote for a new board, and all of that type of stuff. All right. So in doing that process, we found out that this chapter had been inactive for several years, but yet, let me restate, when this guy would put something out in the press, he was one example that happened. This police officer, county police officer, wore blackface on Halloween and posted it all on social media and stuff. And so the media went to the NAACP. They don't know that this is an inactive chapter and he's not the president of nothing because it's inactive. And so they go to him for a statement, and he justifies it and basically says that Black people are just being too sensitive, to make a long story short. Okay, then he talks about how he's friends with the sheriff at the time. We got a different sheriff now. And so this is all unacceptable to me, you know. And so, you know, we did what we did, found out that this was an inactive chapter. So we contacted the state first because I knew from activism work the president of the Mecklenburg, which is in the Charlotte area. I knew her. I knew she was a stand-up sister, and I had gotten her involved. And so she told us who to contact within the state. Then we found out who to contact through the national. Make a long story short, we were able to get in a whole new administration. And then I let my membership last because people were thinking that I was wanting to seek that position and that credibility and the title and all of that. And I was like, no, I have my own organization. I have my own lane or avenue that I use my talents to work to benefit our people in the struggle, right? And so, but that guy was operating as a proxy buffer for the system to minimize the system. I mean, they even came out against us when we were organizing to remove the Confederate monument from in front of our courthouse, which stands there today, which we were able to successfully force a vote on it, but they still ain't moved it, which that was, you know, expected as well. But, you know, that person chose to act in a proxy role for the system of domination. Is that understandable, Brother Najee?
Yes, sir. It's IJ. It's IJ.
IJ, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. It's okay. Yeah, because for those you watching, if you just joined at Harlem Liberation School on YouTube, we teach Black people to wake up, clean up, stand up. We're a Black political education center. You know, we have a lot of different things we need in the community. The role that we play is to provide political education, knowledge of important people, social political movements, history, but not just knowledge for knowledge's sake, family. This ain't Greece or Rome. We're doing this so that we know how to resist our oppression. We know how to have the inclination to build independent institutions and to fight to promote solidarity when possible amongst our people so that we may be self-determined people. That's who we are and why we're here. Tonight, we're speaking with our good brother, Scotty T. Reid from Black Talk Media, who's writing some really, really strong articles, and he's written a book called Proxy Racism. He wants us to expand our thinking. This is what we're about at Harlem Liberation School. Racism is not what it was necessarily in 1910. It wasn't necessarily in 1930 what it was in 1910. It wasn't exactly now what it was in the 1800s. It transforms. It changes. And we must do the same, I might add. So, Brother Scotty, for people who just came in, could you give us a concise definition? Proxy racism, how would you explain it to them?
I actually came up with a definition in 2008, but I have revised that for 2026, and I'm just going to pull it up for you so I can read it to you verbatim. We do have a Facebook page called Proxy. Actually, it is Tools of White Supremacy, facebook.com/Tools of White Supremacy. And the let me pull up the revised definition. All right. The revised definition for 2026, the term, let me see. Okay, the updated term proxy racism, the phenomenon in which individuals from marginalized racial groups participate in and or legitimize or reproduce dominant racial power structures through actions, narratives, or institutional roles, whether they knowingly or inadvertently engage in
Yes,
these
sir.
activities.
You know, when I hear your definition, it reminds me of Kwame Nkrumah, his book Neocolonialism, and trying to explain to folk that yes, African nations have this African independence movement, and yes, we fought, and yes, we're independent nations, but we're still tethered to Europe, right? And some of the and it's through this thing called neo-colonialism. So it's almost like they use us to replicate or to expand to keep racism going. And some people, brother Scotty, it's hard to believe that there's any black person who would think like this in the year 2026. But some of us think that racism is simply a bunch of down home redneck Confederate flag, Toyota truck, lynch ropes, and Southern draws, and those are the only people that are racist and don't understand that racism is larger than a personality. Am I right on that? Could you expand on that?
I mean, I'm right, but those people, that stereotype does exist.
Yes,
Okay, I
sir.
live in North Carolina, plenty of them around here, and what have you, and lynchings and killings do happen. All right, and so I'm sorry. Reframe the question again. You was no, it's not. I understand. It's not that simple stereotype, although they do exist, right? But again, we have to get away from individualizing the person, look at the position that they're occupying, and what's the function, what's the outcome of the job that they are doing. And so we have to then examine ourselves. Like I came to the conclusion at when I was young, and even though I didn't have a framework or a name and never heard of Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. or Dr. Francis Cress Welsing before, but when I was in the Gulf War in 1990, started off Desert Shield. I was on the advanced party. I worked communications and what have you, and we deployed to Saudi Arabia. And then at the same time, I'm picking up Malcolm X's biography and I'm reading that while on my downtime while I'm over there. And then I'm asking questions. And then, like you mentioned earlier, the geopolitics of it all. And then I became to recognize my role. What am I doing as a African American, as a Black American over here in this uniform, over here in these people's beef? And I don't even understand. I'm not accepting anybody's word for it. I'm just a proxy. I'm just a pawn. I signed a contract because what they call the poverty draft. That's how a survival strategy, unfortunately, for a lot of non-white people is. And then we're groomed and we're taught to think of this as being something honorable, but it's also a way to have a roof over your head and three hots in a cot as they say. So again, we got to get away from judging the people and judging the positions. And so when I recognize my role that I'm helping to oppress these other non-white people, I got out after my tour of duty was up. I actually ended up getting 3 months out early of my term, and I was debating about joining again. But because of that experience and reading Malcolm X's biography and understanding my role as a proxy, I was there to practice help spread a system of domination. Whose system of domination? That would be the United States of America Incorporated, the number one progenitor of white supremacy.
Okay. Now,
But the good news is we can withdraw our participation, and that's what I did.
okay.
And not only that, when a daughter of mine asked what I thought about her joining the U.S. Air Force, and I told her you shouldn't do it and talked her out of it.
Yes, sir. I have a similar experience. He was kind of like a sister of mine. He was a lady in our church when I was much younger, and she had a bunch of kids. We all went to church, and we would come to her house, and we would talk, and this and that. And this young lady was like a little sister to me, and she said to me one day that she was thinking about joining the FBI. And
Mhm.
I told her, I gave her such heat for that. I said, you can't do that, my sister. They have been responsible for the assassination of some of our best and brightest. They've crushed many organizations of the Black Power and Civil Rights Movement. Rethink that, and fortunately, she did. She's now become a pastor, and she's a very good one, I might add. Um, so I get it that people
Mhm.
can do things. They're
Mhm.
making a choice based on, let's say, convenience. We want to travel. They want to feed their families. They're not thinking about, oh, this job is absolutely supporting the enemy and oppressing us. They're not really thinking. They may not have the consciousness. They may not be thinking of it like that. And what you're doing is helping people to really rethink when we make these choices, to examine to what degree are we advancing ourselves and the people, maybe to what degree are we participating again in our own victimization. But for people who want further proof, can you tell us, for instance, how would uh how would politics or the media, let's use the media because you're heavy in the media, how would the media or media institutions serve as vehicles for proxy racism?
Okay, let's use the Haitians, sister, for example. And names aren't important here. We know who we're talking about. We want to get away from individualizing it because we don't know their backstory and how they got put in that position. They could have been groomed for it from a young age, or that was their only path to survival. These systems recruit active participants. But if you look at Joe Biden's former White House press secretary, the Haitian black person, non-white person, giving the talking points. I don't think anybody should deny the fact that Joe Biden's a white supremacist and a Zionist, which to me is the same thing. They interchangeable. And so, but here we have this sister giving us this government narrative, and a lot of people will trust what she's saying without doing any further independent investigation or seeking alternative sources, and just accept that narrative. So her being, and Mr. Fuller had a name for it. I think he called it racial showcasing. Okay, so these are non-white proxies who give legitimacy, credibility, and push the narrative. So that's both politics and media. That's why I focused on the White House secretary, but she was a sister who was in that job and defending a straight up genocide. Participating. Uh, um, you know, um, Again, I had never spoken to her. I never interviewed her. I don't know how she got in that position, but that is her function in her role to push the narrative of white supremacy.
Okay, and I'm curious. So far, we're talking about examples of proxy racism or people who help perform it in white spaces. But now, is it possible that we have our people in in other words, are there black nationalists or black nationalist organizations or Pan-Africanists or Pan-African organizations that are participating possibly in proxy racism and don't know it?
Um, I mean, those black spaces we assume or they purport themselves to be conscious. You know what I'm saying? So it's I want to err on the side of saying that they can't be unconscious of it, but then again, they may be. For example, in that space, I talk about. I'm looking at my chapters here. I think chapter 2, proxy racism in black, and no, chapter 3, media influence in the proxy role. So we call them influencers, right? We had these black influencers, Pan-African people where grab whatever title, use whatever label, right? But they're meaning to tap into, a historical grassroots resistance. So they use these labels to attach themselves to it, but they may not represent the true ideals of the founders or the ancestors who established those frameworks for us. But start looking at who the mainstream promotes. Again, I don't want to individualize it, but let's say people a person who call themselves the Prince of Pan-Africanism. I'm like, how did this person get elevated to the point of being on the white space in the media? You know what I'm saying? What had that person accomplished to be given such an elevation in his profile, in his platform, which then exposed him to millions of people, and then to see him engage in, and not just him but others, we see it, attacking or playing into the separation game of the immigrants, or or saying this about that group of black people or that non-white group of people. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be Palestinian, whether it be indigenous to South America, Central America, wherever. Whenever we reproduce the dominant, what they call the mainstream narratives, then we're acting in a proxy role. So I suppose a person could be engaged in that and not really seeing it that way, not intentionally meaning to do that, but that's what the system has elevated him for that, or her for that purpose. Does that make sense? I can't hear you, brother.
My bad. Thank you. In your research for the book, what was the most surprising or the most disturbing example of proxy racism that you found or uncovered? The most surprising or shocking?
It's funny you asked that question, because the most surprising, it wasn't really surprising, but I'm like, how long they've hidden this gem of information. Again, I've always loved history, and I live in what they call America. But I've always read that history because that's what was given to me through the public education system. But again, I expanded out outside of that. But I didn't learn until after I published the book that George Washington, I had knew the story about Venus, his victim of slavery, Venus, that he may have fathered children with, but I didn't know about Mingo. I only recently found out about Mingo, who is an overseer, who was an African, who was put in charge over sections. And I'm talking about doing the whipping and the beating and the stuff like that. And he was acting as a direct proxy, the authority of George Washington, and had that sort of position. Again, let's not dehumanize or demonize Mingo, because we don't know if he was made. You see, we're all in a very, very difficult situation in this vile, evil, wicked system. I don't think a more wicked system has ever been devised. And so we don't know how he was coerced. They was like, you don't do this, we'll kill your wife, we'll kill your children, we'll do this or do that. You see, they starving. You see what I'm saying? So we have to not try to make personal judgment all the time, and just look at the role and the function. How could we have help? Well, let's not use Mingo, but for example, how can we help people who may be acting in a proxy role and not aware of it? Well, we help them by deproxying. Perhaps you could hand them this book, or you could give them the Mr. Fuller's compensatory code book. Something as simple as that, and then spark conversations. Don't always see them in an adversarial role. Let's say we're on a job and I got this brother who's acting in a proxy role that's harming us, right? So I'm like, let me give this brother this book and then see what he reacts from there. Something as simple as that.
Okay. So it's kind of like when we come across brothers and sisters that we observe are acting as proxies. Part of our responsibility is not to judge them, but maybe try to educate them to what's
Right,
going on,
right,
raise their
right.
consciousness, so to speak, on it.
Right. And if they reject it, then they've totally told you what side of the line they stand on, and that's the line of injustice. See, we should always view things through the lens of justice. It's really that simple. No matter who it's happening to, you know, I'm gonna go to Mr. Fuller. He was like a system of justice is when um, a system of justice is where nobody's being mistreated and everybody that needs help gets help. I think his definition was something simple as that. And I can agree with that. That's a simplistic way that everybody should be able to understand. If you in the Black Christian community, Yeshua, who y'all call Jesus, said, treat other people the way you want to be treated. So if I see something like people getting snatched out of their car, snatched off the street by mass agents in Charlotte, you know what I'm saying? Am I on the side of injustice or on the side of justice? And I'm going to go in the media and say they deserve this or they shouldn't be here or they taking something from me. No, I should not. It's either a justice or it's an injustice.
So let me I want to present you with what I believe is a good example of proxy racism that everyone watching this is going to be able to relate to, I think. So, and I want you to tell me is it accurate to make sure that I'm understanding it. There's been talk that in the 80s there was the quote unquote golden age of hip hop. And I remember coming up to Public Enemy and Brand Nubian, Poor Righteous Teacher, and X Clan, and KRS-One, and so many others. And then there's a certain period of time where it seems like the music got into more gangster rap, or at least where I'm at in Harlem, in New York, more hustler rap. Not so much gangster rap, but definitely hustling, talking about selling drugs and making money in big cars. And it would seem to me, I don't know if there was ever like a decree, like from now on, you black people better start rapping about foolishness. But I'm sensing that the way they did that was through incentivizing. So they might have given better contracts or better deals to the brothers that were coming in talking about, gangster stuff. And the brothers that was coming in there or sisters coming in there with some conscious lyrics didn't get those deals. Would that be an example of proxy racism kind of incentivizing? So the rapper is not necessarily coming in there to participate in racism, but they see that money. And so the brother that came in there conscious is now like, maybe I should talk about the streets and licking off shots on people to get that paper. Would that be an example of that?
Yes, it would be an example of proxy racism. I actually have a personal Chuck D story to connect to that. For example, you talking about giving the contracts to who, but let's back up for a minute. Airplay. It's as simple as airplay. Who controlled the radio stations? That stuff really didn't start on Black-owned radio stations. You know what I'm saying? NWA, somebody can check me if I'm wrong, and I could be incorrect, but I don't think that type of stuff popped off on Black independent radio stations. I think it was these corporate-owned radio stations that introduced that element of rap. The origins of rap did start in Black radio, or was played on the air first in those stations, but the raunchier, the gangsterism, the harming each other and selling stuff and money, the materialism and what have you, that would be those multinational corporations. And so I once was producing an internet radio program for this artist who was living in Charlotte at the time, her and her husband, and her name was Cleo Jones, right? And Sister could rap, right? And she had this pro-Black 70s superhero image, you know what I'm saying? And so she told the personal story of how they came to her and told her she need to basically get sexier. You know what I'm saying? Show more
Mm.
skin, this, that, try to push her in that direction. And so she ended up leaving the industry. And she was I think, acolyte or understudy of Chuck D, like a protege of Chuck D at one time. And so she left the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it started. And then, in the book, I do talk a lot about media, and I identify Malcolm X as the first person I heard articulate that it was the most powerful entity in the face of the planet, right? And so, yeah, media is the most powerful way, man, to spin narratives and normalize stuff and so when they start putting that gangster rap and these things that promoted in what people might call immoral activity, although I try not to get into that in the book, that aspect of spirituality and morals and all, and I don't get deep off into that. But when you promote certain behaviors and you keep going in your ear, people are going to imitate that. And then you got the videos and then the awards and all of that. And you saw how what was it, the NAACP Image Awards got corrupted and what have you. That's because it wasn't all black owned anymore. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So does that answer your question?
It sure does. It sure does. Now, we're running out of time, Brother Scotty. Like, in probably 10 more minutes, I'm going to have to end the broadcast.
Okay.
Okay? Um, so I think I have actually probably like really one more question. I think there's an audience question. After readers finish reading your book, family, please go purchase the brother's book. He has a singular book on proxy racism. I think he also has a bundle where you get the book and I believe the audio book, ebook and audio book version as well.
Coming
But
out with
after,
a video version.
all right, excellent, excellent. After people finish the book, what concrete actions do you hope they're going to take to resist and dismantle these hidden systems of oppression, this this proxy racism?
I mean, I want them to recognize their role in how, whether it's where they're working, the industry that they're in, if it's causing harm to people, to find alternative means of income. Okay, it's as simple as that. Examine yourself, examine your life, your belief, your values, right, and determine the not so obvious ways that you may be supporting, proxy racism, which then is an umbrella for all kind of other stuff. Well, it's all under white supremacy, but so that's what I hope they take away, that they could start examining, where do I work? Let me use this. I used to host the radio broadcast New Abolitionist Radio for a number of years. I think we started that in 2013, read the 13th Amendment. I don't even know why I read the 13th Amendment. Never read it before. Found out they didn't abolish slavery, right? So one of the listeners, after a couple of years, called in and said that he understood his role as a prison guard in the system of slavery, of modern day slavery, what we call prison slavery, right? And then he quit his job. He was like me, had the background in the military, got out the military, then he went into the prison industry. And so once he recognized how his role as a prison guard was supporting the system of slavery and he was a proxy in it, he quit. It can become something that simple. It's just withdrawing your participation. It always start with us, right? And the more people that do that and then connect with others and help spread this framework and understanding, then hopefully we'll reach critical mass and people won't participate anymore,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have one last question for you, Brother Scotty. Again, I have Brother Scotty T. Reid's information for his book scrolling on the bottom. But if for some reason you miss that and you don't come back and watch it, you can also go to payhip.com and type in Proxy Racism, and his stuff will come right up. How can black communities identify, or black people, let me say that, individuals identify when they're being manipulated to participate in systems that ultimately work against their own people's interest?
Repeat that again, brother.
Yes, sir. So we're talking about this proxy racism, how we become parties of our own victimization, right? And so now the question is, how can we help our village members to identify when they're being manipulated to participate in systems that will ultimately work against their own interests?
I mean, it's everything go back to education, and you're an educator, so it begins there. And see, that's what I'm hoping my contribution contributes to, the further education and refinement of our knowledge on how the system works, right? And so I not to promote the book, but I'm on here to promote the book.
Oh, absolutely. Promote that book, brother. Yes, sir.
It's a simple framework. I tried to write it for a general audience. I didn't try to make it too academic to where you got to have, you know what I'm saying, a bachelor's degree or whatever, a master's degree to understand it. I'm hoping that people with a high school education will be able to get these concepts. And so I guess it's also good for students, and use the book to give classes, break it down and what have you. And who knows, in the future, I'm going to expand on it, which is what the Facebook page is about, as I call out in real world examples of proxy racism, especially in the media as I see them happening.
Okay, that's what's up. Listen, family, our people, like any people, have priorities. The things that are most important, we're willing to live for, die for, some of us kill for, that we're willing to sacrifice for, save for, be on time for, work hard for. And when we get our priorities straight, a lot of things that we see that we don't like will start to evaporate. So that is to say, those of you who didn't get to see the Super Bowl because you were working or whatever, your TV didn't work, you didn't let it stop there. You went and made sure you went to YouTube or so you could catch the Super Bowl you missed. A concert comes up, you're going to make sure that you catch that concert. You're going to ask people, where can I see the concert? Right? You're not going to just relax with the thing, oh, I missed it, that's all right. Those things are priorities. We have to make our education and our liberation and self-determination priorities. But we're fighting, where we're not going to let anything get in the way. I missed Brother Scott. How was it? Oh, it's on YouTube. Where can I find it? Oh, check this link out. And we go. We have to be like that. We have to be like that for the way we are for a lot of foolishness, and we get real carried away with it. We have to be like that for liberation. We're in Black History Month, and all of us are quoting people, many of whom have been dead for half a century or more. And we have children, and they're going to have children. And when they ask us, well, okay, Mom, we know what Malcolm did, and Neely Fuller and Francis Cress and Amos Wilson, what did you do? We have to be able to answer that. Oh, I wrote Proxy Racism. Oh, we built the school. We got, I believe we got the sister on that came up with a 12-step recovery program for our people dealing with traumatized racism. We got a brother on here for UNIA. That's Brother Ra. Shout out to Brother Ra. Who wrote a book called Facts. There's a podcast. We have to not just study history, we have to make history. And so, brother, I want to just thank you for being a brother that's making. You're not satisfied with just telling us what they did. I like in the book that you quote, that you give props to Baba Neely Fuller, rest in power. You give props to Mama Frances Cress Wilson, rest in power. But what you said was, I liked some of what they said. They gave me a good foundation, but I disagree with some of what they said. And this book I wrote fills the gap where I think their analysis didn't cover it. That's what we got to be doing. With Malcolm, with Garvey, with all of our greats. We don't knock them because they're our foundation, but we got to say, To what degree does what they were saying and doing then fit with what's going on right now? And if we see it fall short, there's nothing wrong with putting things in place, right, to meet those needs. So I applaud you for that, my brother. We got to sign off now, but we're going to have you back on. I want y'all to really, if you got the money, get this book. Go to this website that you see in the bottom. Check it out. It's a nice description. It's on PayHip. I have books on PayHip as well. It's a very good platform for those of us who have digital products. Go check it out and get the book, family, and then check it out. And don't just check it out. Stay in touch with this brother, Scotty Reid. Let him know what you thought about the book. That's important. Let's stay in dialogue with each other. Let's push each other in respectful ways to be better. Let's tell people when we like their work, man, yo, we love your work. Let's be that type of people that can give it up for people outside of our, we're not just self-congratulatory. We can give it up for other people when we see them shining. And we can change a lot of stuff we don't like. Brother Scotty Reid, man, thank you, good brother. Keep up that good work. I'm going to keep reading your stuff on Substack. And I'm going to definitely, I went through the book. Love it. And keep up the good work, brother. We got to have you back on. All right. Any last words you want to say?
Yeah, the struggle continues. Let me put it that way. The struggle continues till revolution comes.
My brother, you nailed it on the head. That's a word you don't hear too much, do you, Scotty? You don't hear the words liberation and revolution no more. That should say a lot. When I was coming up, we said that every day. Had African medallions around your neck. You had your oils and incense. You had your kente cloth, your mud cloth. It was part of the culture. And I think we got to get back to, I'm not saying everybody has to be all African centered out with their clothing, but I'm saying we got to make it part of our culture. Like when you get up in the morning, you don't say, should I brush my teeth? You brush your teeth. You wash yourself. You come in the house, you wash your hands. It's part of your culture before you eat. We have to make what we're talking about part of our culture, right? So that it becomes second nature. And you are one of the people that is participating in that movement to help us get our thinking, our minds right. Because you know what that famous African philosopher George Clinton said, get your mind right and your ass will follow. And on that note, peace and Black Power family. Brother Scotty Reid, we're going to be back in touch with you. Get that book, Proxy Racism, family. And we will win when we organize, when we wake up, clean up, and stand up. Peace and Black Power.